The biggest challenge B2B marketers face with Google Ads is that there are only so many people searching for your product or solution. Combine that with negative keywords and match types, and that amount gets even smaller, leading you to hitting a scaling wall much more quickly and forcing you to go to other channels such as paid social or paid review in order to scale and hit your growing quarterly targets. I'm Silvio Perez, and in today's video, I want to talk about 3 advanced strategies that you can use in order to scale your Google ad campaigns. Let's get into it. And if you happen to like content around B2B advertising, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click on that bell icon down below to be notified of future videos. Strategy number 1 you can leverage to scale your Google search ad campaigns is what I like to call broad match discovery. Now, I know you're hearing broad match and you probably want to turn this video off, but please just bear with me for a second. I'm not talking about pure broad match in the traditional sense. I'm talking about combining your top performing keyword with an audience and using broad match with that keyword and targeting that specific audience. For example, you can layer in multiple types of audiences that Google supports. So whether those are detailed demographics, affinity, in-market, any of your data that you've uploaded into Google, or custom segments that you've created, you can combine all these different audiences as a targeted audience or an observation audience on top of your search campaign. So for this strategy specifically, we are going to be using pure broad match, but we're also going to be using targeting for a specific audience or a group of audiences or a combination of audiences. So for example, one best practice is you should always layer in observational audiences into your Google search campaigns, so that way you can understand how are different audience segments converting within your campaigns. And if you've already done that, then you have data that you can use, so you can already see which audience segments are working best for you. So for example, if those are certain specific in-market segments that you know have already been driving conversions, you can take those top segments and then layer in them on top of your broad match campaign and target those segments exclusively. So it's not just broad match alone, but you have the audience in place as a filter to really help guide Google in terms of, the users that and the searchers that you do want to show up for on Google search. Another example of how to find this information in terms of which audiences you should use is to go to Google Analytics if you have it set up and you have proper conversion tracking in place, and go ahead and filter by the audience report and then interest, and then under interest you can see affinity categories, in-market segments, and you can see what are your top in-market segments and then what are your top affinity categories. And a really easy place to get started is to just grab the top 10 audiences for in-market and the top 10 audiences for affinity, and you can layer those into your broad match discovery campaign and use them as a targeting filter. So for example, business and productivity software is one of our top ones here. So if I go here to Google and I search for business and productivity software, I can actually filter by this specific audience. So in this case, I'm only going to have Google trigger my broad match keyword and show my ads, not only if whatever they deem as a relevant search that gets triggered by broad match, but also if it's only people that fall under this specific in-market segment. Now, I recommend that you do layer in multiple audiences at first, just because you can run into some deliverability issues depending on how much volume your keyword has. If you do have a keyword that has a substantial amount of volume and you're using a broad match variation, then you can probably get away with like 1 to 3 audiences. But if you do have a little bit less search keywords and you're trying a broad match variation to really try to expand and scale your reach through Google Ads, then I recommend ideally 5 to 10. And once you run these different combinations and you start to accrue data, you can take it a little bit further by actually creating a custom combination. So you can actually combine audiences together and you can create a combined segment. So this really depends on your volume, and this is something definitely worth testing, and you can run it as a campaign experiment. But essentially, if you know, let's say these top 3 in-market audiences work really well for you, and you want to combine those different segments together where somebody has to fall into those different segments, then you can do that as a combined audience segment here. You can combine, going back to the example of business and productivity software, I can combine business and productivity software as an in-market audience here. and then I can do an and statement. And then let's say if we know for detailed demographics that people that are in the, let's say, healthcare industry do really well for us, we can get a little bit more specific and combine these segments together. Again, really have to test it, run a campaign experiment, and see what your volume allows you to do based on the keywords that you're trying broad match for. Now, I really don't recommend broad match discovery if you don't have a lot of strong quality conversion data and a very extensive negative keyword list. If you don't have those two things, you might want to wait before you try this strategy. And for those of you that are newer to Google Ads, in terms of scaling your Google Ad account, I really recommend that you start as laser focused as possible using exact match, then moving to phrase match, and then finally broad discovery. And then ultimately, if it makes sense, you can try pure broad match in the traditional sense. And really using this will help you scale in the most efficient way possible, because you can validate keywords that are working for you as an exact match or a phrase match version, and then you can drive more scale from those keywords that are working for you using broad discovery. And then finally, if it makes sense, pure broad match, where you're not targeting an audience and you're just letting Google 100% be in control. Strategy number 2 that you can use to scale your Google search ad campaigns further is targeting non-English languages. If you have the good fortune to be able to support individuals that are not native English speakers and live in different countries, you can see upwards to 30 to 40% breaks on your average cost per click. So you can take your core keywords that are working well for you in English and get the translation into the language in which you want to target, and you can see massive breaks in your average cost per click prices. Now, for order for this to work, you have to make sure that you build separate campaigns targeting this language. And the reason being is if you're targeting this other language, you want to make sure you have this campaign with your keywords, your ads, and your landing pages all translated into that native language. Now, I want to make a huge disclaimer. If you're gonna do this strategy, it can be some effort in terms of getting these translations. And also the downside too is your search terms report is gonna come through in this language that you're bidding on. So if I'm bidding on Spanish, all of my search terms are gonna come through in Spanish. And if you're managing your Google Ad account and you don't speak Spanish, that obviously can be pretty challenging. So ideally, if you really want to do this, don't rely on just like Google Translate in order to give you these translations. Google Translate is not going to give you the right translations that are culture fit appropriate to those different countries or locations in which you're targeting. If you want to make this work, you have to find a local resource that ideally is from that area in which you're targeting. They're a native, and they can work with you to translate your search terms report, translate your keywords over, translate your ad copy over, and help translate over your landing pages. So that way the translation is actually appropriate to the slang and the dialect and the culture in which you are trying to target. So do not rely on Google Translate if you want to do this, as you are going to be sorely disappointed in terms of the translations. So with that being said, if you want to find some local resources to help you do this, a great place to go to is Upwork.com, and you can look for freelancers in specific countries, and you can try to find somebody who lives in those specific countries when you post your job posts, so they can help you with these translations on an ongoing basis. It does take some work to do this, but the savings that you get in terms of your average cost per click prices and the additional scale that you can reach targeting these other users that aren't native English speakers in these other countries can be really, really great for you to scale further. Hope you're finding this video valuable. If you'd like more content on Google advertising, be sure to check out my book called Google Ads Profits, which you can find in the description box down below. All right, strategy number 3 for scaling your Google search ad campaigns is doing industry-related campaigns. So this is where you're gonna take your top performing keywords. So for example, if I'm bidding on CRM software, and you're gonna add a long tail industry-related version. So for example, if I know I'm bidding on CRM software, let's say I'm Salesforce or Zoho or Keep or one of these different CRMs, and I'm bidding on that keyword and it's doing really well for me, I can take that keyword of CRM software and I can create an industry specific campaign doing the long tail version. So for example, maybe it's CRM software for healthcare, or CRM software for small business, or CRM software for manufacturing. you get the gist. Essentially, you're gonna append your industry that you're trying to target on top of your top converting keyword. And this campaign really can be a hit or miss depending on the keyword volume for that core keyword that you're bidding on. But nonetheless, this is great coverage to have, as this is gonna be a lot less competitive as the long tail variation of that keyword. And when somebody does search these industry specific keywords, that is gonna be a much more qualified and high quality searcher for your business as they meet your ICP, right? Because they fall under those core industries that you have identified that convert into the, the greatest win rates, best deal sizes, and all that good stuff that we care about. So industry related search campaigns could be another great option for you if you don't have that coverage already, and you can create personalized messaging in your ad copy that speaks to that industry. So, manufacturing has different pain points than does, let's say, small business or education or healthcare or finance or whatever industry you're going after. So you can personalize that creative to really speak to the pain points and the benefits that that specific industry would get from clicking through on your ad and exploring doing business with you further. Hope this video was valuable. Just to quickly recap, we talked about using broad match discovery, targeting other languages and countries, and using industry-specific campaigns to scale your Google search ad campaigns further. If you found this video valuable, if you can give me a thumbs up, that would help out a ton. And if you like this video, go ahead and check out these 2 videos here, as they'll be super helpful for you. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for future uploads, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.